This is Best Wrestling Podcast with your hosts, John McDonald and Matt Fitzgerald. And it begins now.
Happy Canada Day weekend from your favorite Canadian wrestling podcast. Yes, Best Wrestling Podcast, coming to you live just after celebrating 151 years of Canadian glory. But we're welcoming and we invite nations all around the world to tune into your audio tag team champions. I'm just one half, Jonathan McDonald. But with me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest of all time. He's going in the Hall of Fame this year. I can feel it. Matt Fitzgerald. Matt, what's going on?
Man, I'm fresh off a camping extravaganza trip for Canada Day, just off of my trip to the Sahara Desert. So I'm excited to be back in studio after being in the dirty woods for 72 hours to talk about some hot topics here tonight on BWP.
Man, you live the Ric Flair 85, 86 gimmick. You're always on vacation. I think you're on vacation more than you're at work, my friend.
Man, you know what? It's just my whole life philosophy is Best Wrestling Podcast, and then work to play and play to work.
So we actually jumped right into our recording really, really quickly and off the cuff tonight because we were talking about what we feel is a truly underrated segment that doesn't get the love that a lot of Vince segments do. But we're going to make sure it gets back into everyone's memory tonight. And that is the Vince McMahon lethal dose of poison sketch. Now, Matt, you resurfaced this for me earlier today. And for those of the fans out there that haven't heard or seen this sketch, what can you tell them about it?
I think that this sketch is one of the best promos of all time, and I actually think that it's Vince McMahon's best work. And so if you don't know what we're talking about here, it's when Ric Flair came in, he bought shares in WWE, so now he's business partners with Vince McMahon. He bought the shares off Shane and Stephanie after the invasion. It's Ric Flair's return to WWE after a long time after they bought out WCW. And essentially Vince McMahon is going crazy, and he thinks that Ric Flair is going to kill the is it the WWF or WWE at the time?
Just the tail end of the F.
Just the tail end of the F. So it's still the WWF. So, we're going back a little bit here. And essentially Vince McMahon says that Ric Flair he's cancer and he's going to kill his creation. And it is brilliant work. And Jonathan, the other thing I really loved about this promo is it happened in little bits and spurts over the full episode of Raw. So it after the commercial break, it would come back for a couple of minutes. And throughout the segments, Vince McMahon just gets more and more and more demented. He talks about how he's going to kill his creation. He's crisping his hands. He's looking in a mirror, and you don't know this. And then essentially the punchline at the end is he's going to kill his creation by injecting it with a lethal dose of poison. He flips around the chair, and then you understand that he was looking at a mirror. So there's this cool kind of camera angle aspect to it. And on the back of his office chair is the NWO logo, and he says, "Me and the NWO." And then the program is over for the night. Man, it is up there with shock and creativity and broken brilliance. And I don't think it gets enough credit.
Yeah, man, we might just start a segment called the Fitz Find, because if you're going to keep burrowing and finding these classic segments, I'm all for it. So if you want to check it out, we encourage you, fire up your WWE network. We're no YouTube or Daily Motion supporters here. No, sir. Just search for SmackDown February 02. I mean, there can only be 4 of them, so it's well worth hunting and checking out. Like Matt mentioned, it's kind of this running thing that goes throughout the show, and it's awesome. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I love how, because the invasion angle was such a disaster, looking back on it now, in the moment, I think it was cool, but I thought it was just really great how they were able to transition out of, what was a little bit of a flop into what immediately brought people back into the program and had this excite factor. But of course, go ahead, John.
No, well, actually, you started me down the trail, so I thank you for it. Let's just take a look for a second at a history book, if we can, of professional wrestling. So Vince buys WCW in March of 01 for basically a song and a dance, if you want to believe the rumors, about $500,000, which is ludicrous. Now, obviously, a ton of people, as we've covered on the show, have these mega fat Ted Turner contracts. So for the next little while, they are more than happy to sit at home and collect some cash. So in the summer of 01, when this invasion gets underway, which they quickly scramble and add ECW to and come up with that silly alliance thing, your top guys are basically, I don't know, Booker T, Diamond Dallas Page. And even after that, you kind of got to stretch Rhino, and then they scramble. They add like the Dudley Boys. They flip Stone Cold. It's a mess because they don't have the talent. They don't have the true WCW guys. Now, I want you to just go along the timeline. The Alliance angle mercifully ends Survivor Series 2001, November of 01. Not long after that, well, the very night after it, you have Ric Flair coming back. Then February of 02, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, as Matt just talked about, the NWO returns. Then you keep going, man. And within the next 365 days, it really feels like we get everyone that we could have used anyway. We all know Scott Steiner came back, not really up to his usual Scott Steiner self, but he was there. We all know Goldberg was back. And it really feels like if they just had hung on a little bit longer. I know Eric Bischoff came in the summer of 02. It's probably a bunch more I'm forgetting. It really could have been way better of an invasion had Vince either, one, offered the buyout money. I still think he would have recouped on his investment, or two, just waited until billionaire Ted's contracts ended.
100%. Like, looking back on it now, I mean, it could have been so much better. I don't know really what they were thinking in the moment. I guess they wanted to run with the angle and they did the best that they could have. But man, it could have been the biggest thing ever in the history of professional wrestling. And now, granted, it still, I guess, is the biggest thing after the Monday Night Wars and Vince purchasing it. That was pretty shock, and Shane coming out. I mean, that was all like, especially for that time where there's no social media and like you actually have to watch the program. There's very little spoilers. And so it was an incredible time to be a fan. But looking back on it, like, man, you could have rode that baby out for a long time. You could have had WCW win. You could have just flipped the program to be like WCW, kind of like how NWO took over WCW. It could have been brilliant.
I want to bring up a stat that might blow your mind. Here's how much Vince could have made with this invasion. And I think Vince should have made the gamble like he did with WrestleMania 1. I think he should have bought out the contracts. So the Invasion pay-per-view, which was in July of 01, which sort of kicked everything off, it created so much buzz, so much anticipation for people who just probably heard, whoa, WWF versus WCW pay-per-view is finally happening. It does a staggering 600,000 buys. Now, obviously, none of the star power was there. So when people tuned in, they were probably like, what the hell, Lance Storm and Chuck Palumbo? But nonetheless, 600,000 buys just off anticipation and name value. It's the highest bought non-WrestleMania WWE pay-per-view ever.
Oh, wow. And then when would it have been broken? Donald Trump versus McMahon?
Well, no, so excluding, I could have phrased that better, excluding WrestleManias. So you can't count WrestleMania in the record. It's the highest bought WWE pay-per-view ever.
Wow. And then what was the next WrestleMania that would have, so if that was at 600,000, what would have been the next kind of?
Man, there's a ton of WrestleManias that crushed. Like, we're talking like non-Attitude Era WrestleManias, probably the first couple of Hulk Hogan ones when they didn't even have that many pay-per-view ones. There was one with Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker 2, which was a disappointment. The Safeco Field one, which did $500,000 with Lesnar and Angle, which was a flop. It even beat a bunch of WrestleManias. So that name alone was worth so much. Can you imagine if they had Flair, Goldberg, Sting, and NWO ready to go?
Yeah, it would have been wild because you could have rode that, take a road. Is that a word? Let's say you could have Bobby rode that wave like for a long, long period of time. You know, God, and you would have like the matches that we'll never be able to see because you brought Sting in so late and he's old, and then Seth Stinky Rollins paralyzes him for life, and you know there could have been just so much greatness that we'll never see. But nonetheless. Man, what a time to be a fan, though, watching. I feel bad for all these people growing up in this new PG world where there's social media and Twitter, and, you know, people are releasing when they're going to be on the program via their own Twitter account because they just want the likes and the tweets. # Tori Wilson, I'm talking about you. And you know, back then, like, you had to watch the program. It was like Breaking Bad. When I watched Breaking Bad, like, there were so many cliffhangers and jaw-dropping moments. It reminds me of what pro wrestling was like back in the day.
So let me put you into the fire, like much like you did this podcast here. If you were booking, and I'm not going to get you to do a card. I'm just wanting to know as a fan, you have access to all the talent that eventually would come into WWE back during the July 01 invasion. What were at least, you know, some of the matches that you should have booked or would have booked or would wanted to see?
You know, I would have, the old phrase is keep your powder dry, basically meaning like I wouldn't have blew my wad all in one pay-per-view. I would have tried to drag it out as long as possible, keep the people wanting more. But, some of the matches that I would have wanted to see, I would have wanted to see Stone Cold versus Hulk Hogan. Now, I know Hogan versus The Rock was brilliant, but, if we're kind of tweaking it a little bit, I would have had Hogan versus Stone Cold. I would have had Sting versus Taker. I would have had, I would have just had icon versus icon essentially, but dragged out in some capacity.
No, that's fair. So I think we can work through this, being the two geniuses and tag team champs we are, that, okay, on the WWE side in Invasion, because, it was a great idea to just have a 10-man tag, one fall to a finish. Because that way, like you said brilliantly, you don't have to shoot off the gun. You can save stuff. You don't have to even have a clean finish. You just get that star power in there. WWE side had Jericho, Undertaker, Kane. You got Kurt Angle there. Now, they didn't have The Rock back from his quote-unquote suspension / mummy returns, but The Rock should have been there. So the WWE side's pretty easy to go with. 5 WCW / ECW guys. They can be any. They can be the biggest. They should be the biggest. Who should they be?
5 WCW guys. Who should they have been?
Yeah, so who should have been on the Alliance side during the Invasion pay-per-view?
Well, I think you should have had Hogan.
Yep.
You gotta have. I think you gotta say, man, it's even tough because there's so many. Because I want to say
Goldberg. Would you grant me Goldberg?
100% Goldberg and 100% Sting.
Yeah, I'm with you on those.
And then you got Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. But I think that puts us at 6 now. Oh no, that puts us at 5.
Yep.
But how many do we need?
I'd cut Scott Hall and get my boy Ric Flair in there.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's why it's difficult, because you want the full NWO. And then I was going to say maybe Sting and Flair, but you got to have Goldberg in there, unless you do some kind of angle where one of these guys run in and kind of cost the match for somebody. That'd be kind of cool. But those are the big 6.
Right.
And Sean Stacey.
Yeah, he's a legend, man.
Yeah, and Chuck.
So here's the thing: we spouted out those 5/6. I think they're huge. Only problem is we leave out DDP, Booker T, Rob Van Dam. I mean, are those 3 fair to be left out, or should we have included them?
It's tough. Like, exactly.
RVD is a star. He was a star then. I think he has a star written all over him. I would have. Man, it's tough to not include RVD.
As well, like you gotta have Jeff Jarrett in the picture somewhere, because that would
Jeff Jarrett should be the world champ for years on end.
Because that would have been so badass just to have him in the program.
Okay, yeah, I was being a bit facetious, but Jeff Jarrett was a main event player the last 2 years of WCW. We also left out Scott Steiner. Damn, it's tough, man.
I know, man. Like, having all those guys, and you could have done such crazy heel turn angles, and it would have been brilliant. But I think for sure you got to have those main eventers in, and then you got to have WCW win, because I think if you've got Goldberg, you've got Hogan, you've got Nash, you've got Sting, you got Ric Flair, I think that team should win clean. And that's when now you're really on the edge of your chair and you're like, where is this going to go?
10 years after the July 01 Invasion pay-per-view, a match that you brought up almost happened once again, when in early 2011, WWE was working their tails off to make Sting versus Undertaker a reality for WrestleMania 27. In fact, the WWE was so confident they were going to get the deal done, they started filming and airing, you might remember, a series of vignettes with the mystery man in a cabin. Now, we couldn't see the mystery man's face. It was from behind. It was some shoulder-length dark hair. Thunder and lightning were pouring down rain outside, and we heard, yes, the caw of a crow. Now, those were meant to be for Sting, obviously. However, when the deal fell apart, the WWE had to hastily scramble, and then the last of those vignettes had it so the man turned around and was Undertaker for a match with Triple H. But if only, what could have been?
I had no idea that actually. I must have been high on drugs during that period of the programming. I don't remember the crow going caca, because man, that would have been fantastic. And then maybe, do you think Triple H secretly got his dirty hands in there and made the deal fall through, or was Sting just too afraid that they were going to do to him what they did to Goldberg?
Yeah, I swear I've seen like some YouTube clip on my sidebar that's like, Sting explains why he didn't go to WWE. And I think he talks about it and like, ooh, they jobbed out Goldberg, they jobbed out Booker T. I was afraid of that happening. Oh,
and guess how ironically funny that is, because then he came back and he jobbed to Triple H at Mania. So he was right the whole time. And then, of course, they just had their boy Stinky Seth Rollins break his neck.
Stinky Seth Rollins is going to get one more shot at Dolph Ziggler in the IC title when at Extreme Rules, the pair face off in a 30-minute Iron Man match. Now, we know Iron Man matches are pretty rare for WWE, 30-minute ones even more so. The last time that two men squared off in a 30-minute Iron Man match was the excellent Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle bout from Raw Homecoming, September 05. You might want to check that out. It's awesome. I got a feeling you're going to hate this, but as the wrestling guy, I love it.
No, I think this match is going to be great. I think they're going to set it up so I've got a little bit of a feeling they're going to go for a double turn here and turn Seth heel and have Ziggler win nice and clean and build some sympathy for him. I think we're going to get some Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart programming at this match.
Would you be a fan of doing that double turn?
I like Seth better as a heel than I do a face, and
Me too.
I don't like I think Dolph Ziggler probably plays a better face than he does heel, to be honest. Like, he's kind of cheesy as a heel. Like, I think he could play the baby face a bit better. So I'd be a fan of it. And I'd also think that would then allow Ziggler's son, Dolph Ziggler, to be able to keep the IC championship, which then frees up Seth maybe to do something with the bigger program, which I'd be a fan of. I think Seth versus maybe Lesnar, or I don't know, Seth versus Roman Reigns or something. I think it'd be good. So I'm actually really looking forward to this match.
Hats off to Dolph Ziggler, who every year since 2010 up till present, and including present, has held a championship in that calendar year. John Cena can't say that, nor can the Undertaker, Triple H, Seth Rollins. Only Dolph Ziggler. Probably a record that'll never be broken. Pretty neat little piece of trivia.
Yeah, I feel that Dolph Ziggler, I think behind the scenes, I would think that he's probably a keener and a really hard worker. And I think that he probably shows up early and leaves late. And I think that maybe he's been underutilized for a certain degree. So hopefully maybe he gets a better opportunity. I mean, the whole Vicky Guerrero bit that he was a part of sucked. And yeah, he's not that memorable all in all. So maybe this will be an opportunity for him to be on the spotlight a little bit more, which I would like. I'm excited for these people, like, even though Ziggler has been around for a while, but I'm excited for the day when we have, Elias and Ziggler and Seth really at the top of the card. And we get rid of some of the people that have been there now for a period of time.
Lastly, when it comes to the world of WWE, another person that's been a really hard worker and taken advantage of opportunities is Braun Strowman. He's worked with people like The Big Show and Mark Henry over the last year and a half to improve his craft and become a better worker. He recently won the Money in the Bank contract and is looking to cash in if Bork Laser ever bothers to circle back from his galactic title reign and face someone on Earth. My question to you is this, and I'll be giving you full disclosure. I want it to happen. My vote's yes, but is it time, given that Braun Strowman is one of the few people that they push as a face that's dominant and still cheered by the crowd, is it time for Braun to just get the belt on a Raw, stop waiting for a coronation at a WrestleMania, SummerSlam, a Middle Eastern, take a pay-per-view that exists and add a good adjective to it? And is it time to just go forward with Braun?
Yeah, probably. I think Braun is great. Obviously, he one thing I really respect about Braun, I'm excited about, and the fans listening to this program right now, you'll probably be able to remember this, but I've often said that Braun is very one-dimensional, and he's just a big lug that comes out and says Braun. And I do believe that over the last little while, especially since winning the Monster in the Bank briefcase, there's more dimensions to him. I mean, this whole like Alexa Bliss like little angle, and him being shy around her, and just his ability to now be friends with that really small guy that dresses up like a ripped off version of Venom. Finn Balor. I'm excited. So I think you put the belt on Braun, and I think Braun has a really, really big run, and then you build up somebody as like a mega heel, and you take that program to the moon.
Shout out to one of the best Twitter accounts in existence, Man Yelling Braun, which is just that over and over again in tweet form. So definitely follow that account. There's been so much WWE news that we covered, but there's also some BWP news that we want to cover. So Matt, I don't know if we split duties here and can kind of finally deliver some of the news that we've been teasing our fans with the last little while.
Yeah, big news here, folks. Just to if I can get serious for a moment, myself and Jonathan, we have been potentially. It's not a signed deal yet. We still need to have the official contract signing on an episode of Raw, of course, with McMahon and Kurt Angle, and somebody's going to end up going through a table. But in reality, we've have the opportunity to be a part of a great growing podcast network where we're not really able to say the name just yet, but we can let you know that it's an exciting time for BWP here at the BWP Universe. And what this means for us is we'll be able to align ourselves with some sponsors that myself and Jonathan really see that bring a lot of value. And so it's not just some kind of silly plug, but you'll be able to hear some great content here on BWP for some people that we believe align with our values. And it means more exposure for BWP, which means more great content for you, the BWP fans.
Yeah, and another great thing about this network that we're potentially joining is, you got to think of it in wrestling terms, of course. And so consider it like a faction whereby, there's a bunch of great podcasts that are a part of this network. And rather than, having it as a Royal Rumble where every podcast is for themselves, this is more of a Survivor Series elimination team, in that we try to help each other and we encourage each other. And we're there to make sure that we all grow together, vis-a-vis maybe some advertising, some plugs, some encouragement, some sharing of social media. And I've seen and heard a lot of these podcasts. They're great. And I think that they'll be great for growing us and vice versa. So truly a tremendous opportunity, one that we would definitely be grateful for. And like Matt said, we're awaiting the contract signing. And if and when, and that does happen, and someone goes to the table, you'll be the first to know.
You got it, Pontiac.
We're gonna call it a night there so that the BWP Universe can get ready for Raw, and so that myself and Matt, who are now replacing Dave Meltzer for giving the utmost important evaluations, can watch it too. But don't worry, we're on social media where we can live tweet away with you. I'm at Twitter at RealBW Podcast, and Matt is on Instagram, where it's easier and better, much like him himself, just Best Wrestling Podcast there. So we're gonna shut down the mothership here right now, so Matt can take another 3 vacations. But don't worry, it's Best Wrestling Podcast, and yeah, we have only just begun.